How's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue on October 24 with Anthony Moreau and Neil Prousey. Anthony Moreau is the CEO of American Eagle Gold Corp. Neil is the lead geologist there. American Gold Corp, that might not have been indicative of what they really have, because this is not necessarily a gold company. It's primarily a gold explorer. There's some gold in there too. But I'm going to tell you more about that in a second. They have an asset up in northwestern BC in Canada, obviously, and it's also part of the OR group of companies. He's not here with us today, though, as your financial advisor. This conversation is not going to include any recommendations to buy nor sell anything, nor professional advice of any sorts. It's going to be just a casual talk between a couple of guys, general and impersonal nature as well, and also a conversation that should, under no circumstances, be used as independent research, because it's going to include a lot of forward-looking statements about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future. Please take the minute to pause the video right now and read the full warning that is on your screen, because the mineral exploration, development, and mining industry is among the highest risk industries out there to be invested in. And you will lose your money if you don't know what you're doing. And also, if you don't further your research by visiting the company's official webpage, reading the official filings on setter.com, and consulting, again, an official financial advisor before making any decisions in the end. That all said, American Eagle is a $23 million market cap company at the time of recording of this video. It is divided over about 100 million shares outstanding, and that makes this, let's call it 22-cent stock. There are almost 23 million warrants and options, which means that there are about 125 million fully diluted shares. Teck Resources has invested over, $5.5 million in American Eagle. And so it owns a hair under 20% of those shares that I just told you about. And then another 46% can be traced back to insiders and institutions. Stock trades on the TSX Ventures Exchange under the ticker symbol AE, where an average of about 30,000 shares trade a day, with a 52-week low of 3 cents and a 52-week high of almost 30 cents. About a month ago, the company had about $5.5 million in cash and about $500,000 in account payables, with no long-term debt. The company's flagship asset is called the NAC project. As I mentioned, is up in northwestern BC, about 80 or so kilometers, or an hour drive on a Forest Service road from a small town called Smithers, BC. Although Tony always jokes it's not that small, given that it's got a sushi place. Property was drilled a long time ago, but only to an average. And a couple of companies have tried doing exploration there. So a long time ago was drilled, but it was not. They didn't go deep. It was drilled to an average depth of about 170 meters. So the strategy right now, so far, has been to drill deeper holes, which all of them, by the way, have found mineralization of what is on what is now a surface footprint of about 1.5 kilometers by 1.5 kilometers, going as far down as 1 kilometer. Now, American Eagle has had this project for less than 2 years now, I believe, since December of 2021. And since then, they've raised about $9 million. Drilling a total of 17 holes have now been completed. So those were deep holes. Again, kind of like my feelings of regret when I look at the stock going from 3 to 30 cents and watching from the sidelines in that time frame, right? All of them, again, intercepted mineralization, mostly starting from surface down to depths of between 700 and 900 meters. Grades were ranging from 0.2% copper up to 0.7% copper. And there's also high-grade intervals with over 8% copper equivalent. That is, oftentimes it's mostly copper. So, like, for example, the last hole, that was 70% of it was copper, and the rest is gold. American Eagle says that when looking at the bornite, the chalcopyrite, and the chalcocite that they have on there, that reminds them of a copper-gold porphyry mineralization with decent metallurgy, basically, because of those minerals, which, if the grades and the size of the deposits are right, it also adds to the potential of this thing potentially, again, becoming a mine. So far, again, only 12 holes have been reported, 5 more holes to be reported over the rest of this year, at least I'm hoping. But looking at the maps, it also looks like this begs for more exploration, and mineralization remains open in all directions. I kind of feel like a company CEO when I say that it's open at depth, open in all directions, but it's true. That's what's happening here. It's also possibly true that I should be shutting up already and giving the CEO a sizzling welcome, if you will. So, Tony, welcome to the barbecue, and thank you for being here.
Thanks a lot, Antonio. You said sushi restaurant. There's also a couple breweries there. So, yeah, look, good explanation of the company. You could be a CEO someday too. So, appreciate you having me on. Look, we're really excited about NAC, excited about American Eagle. And like I always tell people, our company's just a tree fall in the forest. Sometimes look around, there's no one around. So, just doing this marketing to make sure people know our name, know our symbol, know our web address, and make an informed investment decision.
Well, this is not the first time we're speaking, but it's been a while since we spoke, and this is also the first time that you're in the barbecue. So I just tried giving you sort of the picture from my eyes, if you will, but I also like getting the full picture from the company's eyes. So let's start off with maybe three things that you really love about the company, and let's maybe not talk about the food, but talk about some other stuff. And also three things that I guess, you would change if you had a magic wand and your last name was Potter.
Antonio, I thought this was a barbecue. It's pretty easy. First question here. Well, what is there not to like about the company? Look, I guess the first three things are pretty easy, but look, we're hitting grade. That's what you want. We have scale. Every single place we've hit has come up with copper and gold. Just got off the phone with Charlie, Greg, and Neil, who's on the call here. We haven't missed on any hole. If you look at our neighbor nearby, their hole they just released, was the same as our worst hole we've ever released. The other thing, which isn't as sexy, which is why I didn't say it first, but it's our infrastructure. You already touched on it. You can access this property very easily. It's got good elevation. You don't need to use helicopters to access the drilling. It's right next to Smithers, Ontario, which I like to call the Collingwood of BC. It's beautiful. People want to live there. It's got about 10,000 people there. It's a great place to raise a family. It's not just about raising a family, but where you want to raise a family means you have labor, means you have power, means you have people. Means you have access to critical spares. So just absolutely amazing. Three things I don't like about the company. I'm not joking. My uncle founded this. He died. We've had a lot of fun working on it so far. Every night I wake up at midnight, looking at our drill results. There's nothing really I don't like about our property. There's things that frustrate me, Antonio. So I'll start there. It's frustrating when we come out with really great results. It's frustrating how crappy this market is. It seems like the better our results get, the more we sell off. And I think it's just a factor of the market. People take results as kind of a liquidity event. If you saw our first drill hole, it was amazing. It was over 120 meters of over 1% copper equivalent. But it was 850 meters of 0.37%. Knew very little about it last year. We did 4 of our 7 holes were vertical, all drilled along a drill fence. 2 of those 7 were incline, albeit going south to north. So only 1 was an east-west incline. So we learned a lot over the offseason. And guess what? We've hit better and better and better results. So this year, our first result was 800 meters of 0.5%. Our most recent one was, even longer of 0.5% copper equivalent, very high copper. So yeah, look, we're having really good results. It's annoying how we haven't seen our price appreciate. But again, I don't think that's us. I think that's just because of the market. Seeing a lot of the second thing that really annoys me, seeing a lot of other projects that aren't as great seeing appreciation. I think, again, a factor of the market. You're seeing a lot of fast money. Not a lot of investors out there buying. When you see your stock go down, it's not a lot of people are selling. It's just not enough people are buying because people that want to come into our stock or own our stock or maybe waiting for it to get a lower place. And people that want to do some speculative buying, guess what? They're just going to try and jump into those pump and dumps. I'm not going to say their name. You know who they are. They want to get those 10, 20, 30, 100% returns, jump from stock to stock to stock. But again, not to name companies, but it's really annoying when I see companies give scandium as a byproduct. What's next? We're going to start giving, start using the aggregate for a byproduct. Use your byproducts that companies actually process. Moly, silver, gold, copper, scandium. That's criminal. It is criminal. Also, we come out with assays. We had 900-meter holes. Look at me right now. You do not release partial assays, especially when they're short holes. They all come sequentially. So if you're not releasing a whole hole, there's a reason why you're not doing. It's a pump and dump. You're hiding something. You're buying time. I don't know, but there's no reason why anyone should do that. It should be barred by the TSX. I don't think we have any oversight from the OSC. So just seeing that from companies like us that really have a great deposit that I believe will be a mine, and seeing other people kind of cut the rules, it's frustrating for me. So that's another thing. I think the last thing is, our strength's also kind of our weakness. We have so much scale, we have so much opportunity to kind of hit everywhere, that we do kind of do wide step outs. So we can't get to all of our targets fast enough. We only have 1 drill rig. I like to have multiple drill rigs, but we got to deal with the market, deal with the budget, not dilute our shares. Have you seen, Antonio? I've been really scared to go to the retail. I want the retail. If they want shares, they got to buy it in the market. So our last two raises have been with Teck. When you do a regular private placement with the retail, they sell it, they coupon clip. So not only does the retail access it through the private placements, I also call them secondary and tertiary fish. So they buy it off the first retail that sell it, and then those retails sell it, and other people buy it. So I want to keep it as tight as possible. We have really good share structure. It protects our stock. So our stock may be down from its low, but we're still up 1,000% over the year. So I don't know if I gave you three answers. I maybe gave you six or two, but
There's loads to digest there. You did give me three and maybe a little bit more, which I appreciate. And I hope we'll be able to get to most of that. But there's also something that you said there specifically about doing the work. And that is something that I obviously want to talk about. I want to talk about the drilling plans of this year that they caught my attention, right? Because, and you mentioned it, you're doing, wide step outs. And also in your presentation, you're talking about that you want to expand the surface mineralization. You want to define the deep mineralization, expanding the potential satellite deposit. Then also further doing step out drilling to get closer to basically knowing the true size of the NAC deposit here. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of strategies going on here for one drill program that is, sure, it's 9,000 meters, but those are deep holes, right? So not that many holes. What's the thinking behind this strategy specifically, and what is the end goal here really being of this 2023 drilling strategy?
when you have so many different targets and you drill as wide as we do, it confuses investors because we have a lot of different stories to tell. But what I'm hoping that investors, I'm dovetailing into your answer, what I'm trying to prove to people, what I think, and Neil can maybe talk a little further about this. I think what we see is the north zone, north copper zone, the south copper gold zone, and that Teck Pros hole over to the east, they're not really satellite deposits or different ones. I think they're all connected, and we're trying to, slowly connect the dots there and show they're kind of all one deposit. But we got to do that within a budget. Our plan this year was, again, we drilled within a fence, very narrow fence. 4 of the 7 were inclined. 2 of the 7 were 4 of the 7 were vertical. 2 of the 7 were inclined north to south. So we had no clue about the geometry. So our first hole this year was just to prove the south gold zone. And what we want to do is connect the north and the south. But what happened is when we want to cherry pick some gold grades, we got an 800-meter intercept, and all of a sudden, we're like, holy gosh, this South Copper Gold Zone, which we thought was maybe going to be a small open pit to start, looks huge and robust. So that changed our whole plan. So we want to kind of prove that out more. So it took away some drill holes that we're going to do in between the north and the south. But I think what we did this year was very good for our budget. We did prove that the South Gold Zone is really big. We hit some wide intercepts on the North Copper Zone to prove and remind people that there is higher tenor copper in the north, and it's still open in all direction. And again, in 2309, I always call it a drunk hole. We had no clue it was going to be there. It was based on some geophysics, and we hit 0.4% copper from the top, 120 meters, I think going in the wrong direction. So it showed that we have copper and gold everywhere. So what we're going to do next year, I think, and I hope, is connect all these zones and then kind of spread north and spread further east.
Talk to me more about that, because what does that mean for you 2024 are you have the gold bridge zone, right? Then you have southwest is also interesting. Southeast is not uninteresting. Are you going to be going back to the north zone? Do you have a plan even for 2024 already, or do you still have to go through it?
Right now we're still processing data from the season, right? There's still more than half of the program's assays to come in at this point. So we're going to be taking all of that data into consideration, but already just from visually and from really getting a better handle on the geology this year, I think we have a pretty good plan in place for how we need to target this next season. That is going to involve drilling some holes to connect the north and south zone at an orientation that's going to be maybe a bit more favorable for showing the true thickness, or the true a more true portrayal, I think, of the potential that this zone hosts, as well as there's still a lot of potential north of the north zone as well. It's doing exactly the same geophysical signature, and the same geology. The drilling up there to date, historically, is very wide spaced and dominantly very shallow. Just because we did a vertical hole to the north, for example, in 2022. It was about 900 meters of 0.2 copper equivalent, which is still very strongly anomalous copper. And we know from drilling to the west of immediately adjacent to the porphyry stock, we hit some stronger grades. I mean, we still see that pattern holding as we drill to the north and to the west. Hole 14, for example, I think people will be pretty happy with. And again, assay still pending on that. That follows all the way around down to the south and then down to the southeast where we drilled hole 9. It's all of the mineralization right now, signs are pointing to being associated with this larger porphyry intrusion. Geology is consistent, alteration is really consistent around it, and we have a consistent geophysical signature that correlates pretty strongly with where we're seeing mineralization. So we have a lot of indications that, like Tony said, we've really scratched the surface. We've expanded out from the historical drilling to give us the best odds at expanding what is known. And I think with this information we have now from this season, we'll be able to plan a very strong 2024 program.
Getting to your head right now, Neil, what zone are you most excited about?
I always like the unknown. I'm very excited about actually what we saw down in the south zone with the stronger gold grade. There's some very interesting mineralization there. We're seeing a lot more molybdenum than we saw as well, immediately adjacent to the porphyry stock. And where we see this molybdenum and chalcopyrite mineralization, we see a stronger association with gold grade. And this is very similar to what we saw almost a kilometer away to the east in hole 9, where the moly grade was quite strong in comparison to the copper grade. And with that, there was a corresponding boost in the gold grade as well, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 grams per ton gold, within a zone of mineralization that wasn't visually all that striking. You could see little, the odd dissemination here and there and the odd veinlet, but, it wouldn't have jumped out at you as hosting pretty decent porphyry gold grades or molybdenum grades. So that's very encouraging, is seeing that commonality, that association between copper, gold, and molybdenum in the south zone, and then all the way wrapping around to the east now. So it shows we've got consistency in the mineralization, offset by a very large distance with almost no drilling in between. So that little bit of data that we've got from the east, I think, will really help give confidence to maybe doing some more what would be considered risky step out drilling along that southern margin.
How much of your drill program would you dedicate to sort of the risky step out versus de-risking the project?
It's tough to say at this stage, right? Because if we drill our first hole and it's not looking all that encouraging, then thankfully we have what is already proving to be a very large area to the west of the intrusion to expand upon, infill, and better define. But that said, if that southern margin zone shows the encouragement that could very well be down there, then that would definitely redirect some of our focus. And this is where it would be nice, as Tony said, to have the option to bring in a second rig, right? If we start to see two areas that are separated by a pretty appreciable distance, having that second rig would be really nice to be able to focus on the main area we were focusing on this season and this southern zone, and then eventually wrapping around to the north and to the east of the intrusive as well. I mean, there's been almost no drilling along those margins, and it's all within the same very encouraging geophysical signature. We just need to get those really widely spaced test holes to prove up the theory.
Like, Neil, tell Antonio, like, how open are we here? Like, forget 2309, which we can move across. We can go all the way around that halo, and then from the north part of 2305, you see that it wasn't a great hole, but it went directly vertical, so we could just drill in the wrong zone. That's why we like the inclines, but we're also open north there. We're open south. There's so much of this area that we haven't been able to drill. And like the budget's frustrating too, because like if we were a major, like we would just blitzkrieg this thing and probably got a resource within a year. So again, like our strength is kind of our weakness. But Neil, let's just touch on that really quick.
Well, I mean, the measured approach for the scale that we're at, I think, has been a benefit. You know, we haven't had any holes that have missed. Even the holes that are, you know, even our dead holes are still very strongly anomalous in copper. If that was, you know, if hole 3 or hole 5 was drilled as the first hole on an unknown project, you would be very, very encouraged by that. Sure. Very strongly anomalous copper. It would show that you were on the fringes or very close to, you know, what could be a pretty robust system. Thankfully, we know we do have a very strong mineralizing system here. Hole 12 was spectacular. But again, that's, you know, 250 meters away from hole 5. So there's a lot of space in between to test. And like Tony said, hole 5, you know, very strongly anomalous, but yeah, we step out a little bit to the west or drill an incline hole to the west, and similar to what we did in the south, there's that potential. So yeah, it's very open at depth, and it's very open throughout the center of this property. It's a very large geophysical anomaly, and now we're proving it's a very large geochemical anomaly in the drilling at depth. So it's still quite open to expansion.
Are you only like, do you want to expand it vertically to, again, open at depth? You mentioned it a few times. Do you want to do even deeper holes next year? Like, is that an option at this point?
No,
right now, I don't think that going deeper is going to be advantageous to our understanding. I think we'd like to expand the horizontal, the XY footprint, as opposed to the Z footprint at this point. Given that we've already shown that mineralization extends likely in excess of 1 kilometer deep in these higher grade zones. So right now we want to expand tonnage that way. It's a lot more efficient to test shallower than it is to test deeper. Drilling speed goes down, drilling cost increases. So at this stage, yeah, unless we're in something absolutely spectacular, kind of 950 to 1 kilometer, I think, is the max we would go.
How would you define absolutely spectacular in this project? Is it like another 900 meters of 1.5% or something? Or
if we're looking at it visually and we're seeing, you know, estimates of 1% copper mineralization that could support 1% copper, like if we're seeing greater than 3% by volume bornite in the core, for example, we would keep going. We ended hole 12 in still quite strong mineralization, but it was sporadic veins of bornite as opposed to consistent disseminated. So that's kind of where we would draw the line. Again, it's all kind of a call that's made at the discretion, right? Day to day, it really depends. You know, it depends on how much bit life you have left at that depth. If we just put a fresh bit on and, you know, we knew we were going to be drilling somewhat efficiently at that depth, we might say push it. If the bit's about to die and it takes you a full day at that time to pull rods and put a new bit on, it's kind of like, well, you know, we've got a lot of ground to test elsewhere. What's best use of our time and money?
We have a budget. So the first couple of days when you drill, you can drill 100 meters a day. Now, once you start going past 800, 900 meters, you're drilling, 25 meters a day? So it costs you four times.
Dude, we're getting about 40 meters a day below 900 meters.
So 2.5 times as much. You know, we had 3 meters of 1% copper equivalent, 6 meters from the bottom of hole 12. So some would say it's sporadic, but you know, others would say and look at it, it's like it's just starting the big system. It's sputtering, and then we're gonna hit it. The reason why we got this thing in the first place was we believe there's a red crystal underneath it. We believe that there's some ore body that started at 600 to 900 meter level, which is why we did vertical holes right off the bat. last year. Now we hit some stuff from surfaces, which is why we kind of changed our plan. It's easier to drill from surface. It's more economical, but we really do believe another huge prize besides the big scale going out towards nine, etc., and further developing, the north and south zone is that monster that exists underneath. And unfortunately, it costs so much to get there, and it's a little bit more risky. But what we're hoping to do is prove up the surface, prove up what we're currently doing with good work, and then get those dollars, get the equity up so we can afford to do those deep drill holes, 800 to 1400 meters, and see, is there really red Chris there? Because my uncle who helped found this project, that's the reason why we got there in the first place, but it'll just completely blow your budget out as a junior in this crappy market.
What's yeah, absolutely love to go deeper, but
well, you're a geo, so you guys always do. But what's also interesting to me is that sort of you drilled the whole 9 once Teck got in. That's sort of the Teck hole, right? That's what you call the Teck hole, if I'm not mistaken. Hole 9.
It's not. We don't have the copyright for Teck. I did it as tongue in cheek. It gets a lot more attention than the Prouse hole. But I'll be honest with you. We already did our plan. We showed Teck where we're going to drill. That was Neil decided to go there based on geophysics. Teck said, heck yeah, we want to go there, make that a priority. But they didn't hold our feet to the fire. Neil helped find that. Teck said they really wanted to go there. I call the Teck hole for fun, but in reality, that's the Neil Prouse hole when we went there. The only thing people have to realize is, again, we're working within a budget. It costs twice as much money to do helicopter drilling. We didn't have a road going there, and we didn't want to build a road there if we didn't have to. So we did do helicopter support. It cost a lot of money for standby drill. So we had to drill for free that we actually mobed for another company. We were able to hold it for free for X amount of time so that other company would pay less mob getting to their property nearby. So we had a limited time period to work on it. And that's why we had to drill that early. Had we waited a little bit longer, would have cost us a lot more money, but we probably would have had kind of more of a strategic direction that we went in. But again, we hit really great mineralization right off the top for a blind drill hole. If someone stepped on the property and that was their first hole, it'd be deemed a real success.
The interesting part is that what caught my attention is that you call that one the Teck hole, and it's also just all the way to the other side than the other holes. It's to the east and to the south of all the other holes. It's sort of like closer-ish to each other. And this one is what, 400 meters away or something like that.
That was 700 meters away. And if you look at other companies in the area, like our drill holes aren't even that close. They're 200 meter, sometimes 400 meter step outs. Like those are big step outs. Go look at our competitors. Look at their plan view and how close they're drilling to other holes. Not only are they a lot closer, but like a lot of them aren't hitting, which is why it's hard to kind of piece that together. Our drill holes, I think our closest hole is 100 meters. So that's a city block. So still pretty far, but just the way our plan map is and how wide our scale is, it looks like they're kind of close, but they're really not that close, as Neil can attest. He's on the ground every day.
Right. No, yeah, but I just meant relatively, like it's relative. For you, it's relatively far out. That this is the hole that has the highest difference between it and the other holes relative to the other holes, and that got my attention. Like, why would Teck want you to drill there? That's what I was going to ask. Like, what does Teck want you to do, and do they even get a say in what you guys do?
They are very smart people. They also know we have 2 of the best exploration geologists, BC focused in the world. So let us do our thing. They're very good at building. They're very good at mining. They're good at spotting, potential for deposits, New Afton, Hemlo, Voisey's Bay. But they also identify when there's really good geologists. So they let us do our work. But they come in here and say, guys, look, I think that's a good area. Like if you want to drill there, I would really encourage it. But for one word, why they want us to go there, it's simple, Antonio. The word's called scale. These guys aren't looking for a 10-year life. They're looking for a 50-year life. They're looking for a lot of tons. And the best way to add tons is through scale, do big step outs. So that's kind of like the first proof that we do have real scale besides just the north-south corridor. It also goes east. And guess what? Next year we're going to probably go northeast to see if we wrap around that big chargeability halo.
Right. Okay. What are you thinking? One or multiple drills for next year? I think you mentioned something about it, but I know you would like more, but what is realistic at this point?
I don't need more money. I want more money, but I want to do it. I don't want to cost our current investors that are in there. I call it dilution by not dilution. You get really strong shareholders in there. Sure, Teck came in, diluted the company by 20%, but guess what? They're not selling it. They're in there for the long haul. We are fully funded. I always say this: investors aren't very savvy on the geology side. They're very savvy on the private placement side. They know when money is going to be issued or shares are going to be issued. So we are fully funded for one drill program. If the right opportunity with the right partner comes up, I would love to do a 2 drill program. And that's what a lot of our work is going to be over the off season. Can we find another partner to come in? Can we find another institution, someone that wants to hold on to it, long term? And, we're going to spend a lot of time and effort and trying to find that right investment. If the right opportunity comes around, yeah, we're going to get more money, but we don't need it. We want it and we'll look for it, but we want to do our current shareholders right.
Does Teck being in there for 19.99% stop you from doing that? I mean, I know it doesn't technically, but does it in reality? Like, does it scare some of the other big boys off?
I think you'd have to ask them. It's like, maybe, but we're not necessarily looking for other mining companies in there. I think my focus most is like institutions and funds. If someone tapped us on the shoulder and they want to participate, I think that's a decision we'd have to think about seriously. But Teck was there. They believed in us. They spent 6 months with us. They gave us money when no one else believed in us. So we want to respect them. But again, we want to do what's best with their shareholders. So we'll take each deal and offer as it comes. But our focus right now is on institutional funds, big companies, big funds that want to hold on to us long term. Look, there's some electric companies, publicly traded giant electric companies that have been talking to us. Looking for offtake, down the road, not looking to be an operator, but looking for that copper in North America. Because guess what? Look around the world. It's not getting any easier, Antonio. Africa's a tough place to be. South America's a tough place to be. There's no metal in Europe pretty much. Don't want to go to Asia. Australia's too far. Canada's where you want to be. US, you can't permit. You got a lot of those car makers looking for offtake. Canada's where they want to go, and they're going to start talking to juniors like us. We've started to hear them knock on our door. So when's the right price? When's the right time and right price for them to take an equity investment that wouldn't disappoint or upset Teck? Those are decisions we have to make. We're going to spend the next 3 to 5 months trying to make that decision. And I hope that's going to create a lot more news flow down the line too.
Right. I have one more question, by the way, for Neil here in a second, but something you're saying here that I do want to address is that something that I've been wondering about, whether that's a risk too, because I'm assuming obviously Teck having almost 20% here, that opens the door for a potential acquisition later down the road if they like what they're seeing, if they think that strategically fits them. But what if it's not much later down the road? I mean, what if they like what they see next year, but the market still sucks and they want to acquire you prematurely for like 30-40 million bucks? Like that almost seems like a risk to me. How do you look at that?
I've worked with Teck a lot. They're amazing people. The people that work there, they've all worked there pretty much their whole lives. And I think that speaks volumes to that company, their culture, their people, how they treat other companies like us. The same way we're not going to go right over our way and try and talk to other mining companies, be respectful of that relationship. They're respectful of ours. Look, they're a big company. They don't just go and invest willy-nilly. They want to de-risk things. I worked for a mining company for a long time. They'd rather spend $300 million on a junior company than $30 million, have it, de-risked. And the further you de-risk it, the more value you get for your company. So if you see us get to a point where Teck wants to buy us, well, heck, like, we're going to appreciate it. Our stock price isn't going to be at 22 cents forever. We got to get past that 33-cent level. That's the big resistance level. And after that, it's to the moon. So that's a good problem to have someone come in and offer you to take you over. But, one thing I know, Canadian companies in general really don't do hostile takeovers. I can't see Teck doing it. But again, like I said, with anyone that comes in, another company want to take 20%, we'll take each decision as it goes. And same thing if Teck happens to come in. But that's a good problem to have. I think it's a little further down the line. But look no further than GT Gold. I think they put 22 holes in the ground. That thing went public. I think within 3 or 4 years, they sold itself. If we have another rig on there, we can do 2 rigs. We can blitzkrieg it, do 20,000 meters, combine the north and the south, work out to the east, and also go at depth. I think we can add a lot of value to us, and maybe we are in a position to sell end of 2024, beginning of 2025. But, a lot of that's depending on the assays. Heck, we're only 5 assays through a program where we did, the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth incline holes ever on our property. So we're waiting for the second half of our assays. As you've seen, a lot of our results, most of them have gotten better and better. And that's no surprise because we're just starting to understand this system. How we differentiate ourselves from every other project in BC, pretty much, besides the infrastructure being next to Smithers, is the fact from our discovery hole where we got that big price appreciation, where people started to realize who we are, our results actually have gotten better. Look at the other ones who got those big investments from other companies. You haven't seen better results since then. Our results have been better along the way. So half our program has been released this year, but we still have another half to go. So don't be surprised if you see better results. So it's just going to take one inflection point, one big person take a buy to get us above that 33-cent level. That will cause a lot of other people to buy. But right now we're in pump and dump world. People are focused on, garbage projects. We're letting the good people do the good work, and we will be discovered. And I think we're going to be a lot different point next year when you interview me, Antonio.
Sure. Well, let's. I'll be looking out for that. And Neil, back to you, because it's something that I wanted to ask. When I look at a plan view of where you've drilled so far, and you also present the Babine Porphyry outline on a geophysical map, and all of those holes that you've drilled are either on sort of on the left, on the outskirts of that outline, so to the west, or a little bit, I guess, to the southwest of that porphyry stock as well. And it also appears to be sort of in the green spots or in the yellow spots next to the green spots, where basically means the chargeability of the rocks is low. How come? Well, why drill there, and why not target sort of the middle of the Babine porphyry stock, or where chargeability is high?
So yeah, that's just the nature of the style of alteration associated with these porphyry systems. The IP signature we see, and then I believe the geophysical map you're referring to is showing the chargeability. The higher chargeability is typically a result of disseminated sulfides, which are chargeable minerals. Porphyry alteration is typically characterized by a phyllic halo. The phyllic alteration zone is typified by disseminated pyrite. And so the really high chargeability zone that you see in the donut, the ring around that porphyry intrusion, is just that. It's the more, as you're getting a bit more distal to the system, and the best mineralization we see is actually in between the porphyry stock itself and the broader phyllic halo. Now we have shown that there is some overlap of that chargeability, at least on surface, and exactly what that anomaly is doing at depth is kind of hard to judge, because it's difficult to get 3D IP down to those sort of 800-900 meter depths. You kind of peak out around 550 meters for accuracy. But the reason that we're drilling mostly in that middling chargeability zone is because that's dominantly where the chalcopyrite and bornite is hosted. And as we get a bit further away, we start to get into the more pyrite, and even further still, we're starting to see pyrrhotite, and we see the copper and the gold drop out. So we have, from the geophysics, at least at surface, a pretty good guide on where to collar the holes and then drill from there. So we have this really nice, pretty broad ring of optimal prospectivity, let's say, around the porphyry stock intrusion. Now, the porphyry stock intrusion itself is very interesting. It's largely unmineralized, even along the margins, which is somewhat unusual for a porphyry. These typically, you will see quite a bit of disseminated sulfide within the porphyry intrusion. That said, it itself is host to chalcopyrite and bornite veining, which is quite interesting. And it kind of shows that, there might be a secondary porphyry center within that geophysically it's going to be difficult to pull out, especially at that scale, and it might be quite a bit deeper. So I think as we expand this, there will be a couple holes, more bold step out holes drilled a bit deeper into that porphyry stock to see if there is a secondary intrusive, or the mineralizing phase of that intrusive, because we see a lot of veins that are going outward from a center clearly, and they're intruding and mineralizing Babine Porphyry stock. So a really awesome thing to hit in this case would be some mineralized Babine Porphyry, and we see that in dikes, which is interesting. We get dikes of mineralized Babine Porphyry a bit more distal to the porphyry stock, but the porphyry stock itself is mineralized just with veining. So yeah, it's fairly complicated what's going on. But yeah, we're gonna explore responsibly around where we know we're gonna hit mineralization to expand it. But as this project advances, it would be very reasonable to expect some deeper pilot holes going into that intrusion, seeing if we can get a mineralized stock maybe a bit deeper or central to it.
Right. And that goes to what we previously, I guess, talked about is what is the main strategy for you guys, as far as I understand it, is sort of to define where does mineralization end on the X and Y axis instead of the Z axis. And so that's where you're going to be chasing it again. I assume, or as far as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's largely right. Again, as Tony has said, we're constrained by budget, right? We don't want to expend a lot of money on risky strategy. So we want to use good geology and good knowledge of how this style of deposit is typically formed to explore and define something that's economic. But that doesn't rule out the possibility that, once that is defined, of finding stuff further, right? Going deeper. Red Chris was pretty well defined as a lower grade deposit before they discovered that deeper zone. And that's kind of the strategy that a lot of explorers employ on their properties, right? You find something that's economic and attractive, but you don't stop exploration.
Right. Tony, you've been quiet for a couple of minutes. You okay?
Just letting Neil talk.
He's good to listen to. He knows his stuff. I've been what I've also been thinking is that there's a couple of other things that you're doing again, as you said. There's you're aiming to understand the structural controls, orientation of the dikes, the geometry of this potential ore body. Again, all the important things. I'm wondering how far they can keep the excitement in the stock price going, though. Again, you went from 3 cents to 30 cents, a little bit down from that, but there's still a lot of the stock has stayed high as it is, or at least it stayed where it's at right now on excitement of grades, right? So is there pressure on you now to keep coming up with grades, and maybe you don't have time to understand the deposit?
Antonio, there couldn't be less excitement in our stock. Otherwise, we wouldn't be trading at 22 cents. I think that's what people forget about. It's like investors look at where you came from. So we came from 3.5 cents. They think maybe you're fairly valued, overvalued. But look around. Look at the other companies around there. Compare the drill results. Compare the infrastructure. There's no comparison. It's one thing if you want to invest in junior mining stocks, you got to pick your commodity. There's no commodity to pick but gold and copper. Copper is it's a new pipeline for the world if you actually want to do electrification. And gold protects you from downside in terms of complete collapse in the economy. So copper and gold, where do you want to be? You want to be in BC. So if you actually want to invest in the junior mining space, I don't think there's any other place but to invest in Canada. Pick your province. If you pick BC, look around. Is there a better company that has more upside than us? The answer is no. So I think when you say keep excitement up, I don't think excitement's there at all. We're completely undervalued. If this was a different market, and look, you deal with the cards you're given, I don't know if you can give values, but we should be worth at least 5 times the value. So I think excitement can only pick up when people start to realize they're going to get burned on these pump and dumps. Don't have to name names. You know who they are. Look, I think we're undervalued. I think it's a good entry point right now. Talk to your investment advisor. We're going to continue to have really good drill results. And we have a lot of surprises over the off season. We don't need to do a raise. And there's only upside here. So, people take cues because they don't understand geology and they're lazy. People spend more time trying to invest what camera to buy as opposed to what company to put $10,000 in. And they want other people to do their homework. So, people want the Rick Rules, the BDs, the Frank Juicers to do their homework for them. Guess what? They don't invest in the other stocks that they can't front run and get half a penny stock for. So who are you going to get your advice from? Take the big companies. The companies have had big discoveries before. New Afton, Hemlo, Voisey's Bay. How many times do I have to say it? It's Teck. It's the Freeports of the world. Where are they putting money? Because they're in there for the long run. They're in there to eventually buy out these companies if they actually do turn out the goods. So you have light at the end of the tunnel. That's who I'd be taking my cues from. So look at Teck. Look what Teck's doing. Look at the great people we have. Big ore bodies hanging with big ore bodies. There's big ore bodies around us. But guess what? You want the guy at the wheel that drove the Ferrari, that made the most recent big discovery in the area. That's GT Gold. That's Charlie Gregg. It's Progy Neil. You see him. He's been talking to you. So we're giving all the different parts rest for this recipe. It's up to the public. A, do they know who we are? And B, do they want to invest in us? But I guarantee you, stocks can do 90% better than a lot of the other companies out there. They're just showing core photos, using scandium as byproducts, and just delaying on the results are inevitably going to be bad. We let our assays do the talking, and they've been amazing, been better each time. So you can only be lucky so much.
Right. Well, but so in when I say excitement, I mean relative excitement to other companies. There's other companies that I'm in, for example, and they would release geological results that are interesting and are telling us a whole lot more about the story, but there is no big grades in there, right? And so in any other market, this would have been, again, as you pointed out, maybe an unimportant question, but keeping people interested in a story right now, as far as I can tell, is really about grade and the length of intercept. So what I'm asking myself is, if you get to a point where you just want to understand this geologically and you don't care too much about the grades, and the grades start dropping off, can you still keep people engaged? Like when I go to a COCA board, people are engaged. A lot of people are talking about your stock relative to other stocks where there's nobody in the boards or have been dead for 2 weeks. So that's sort of where I'm getting at with this.
Well, I mean, it's hard to keep people interested without great grades, but as you've seen, we've hit really good grades everywhere we've drilled in certain drill holes. So I don't expect that to necessarily end. Some of our decisions now, Neil touched on it earlier. Look, we wanted to drill between the north and south zone to show the continuity, but we realized the market we're in, we're going 100 miles per hour on a motorcycle and hit a dime, we're going to fly off the highway. So we got to be really careful in terms of where we pinpoint these drill holes. So we thought the very last hole would be very good, doing an east-west scissor, going from west to east on an incline across where 11 is, to show that not only is there high grade starting from surface on the east going towards the west at depth, but we also believe there's high grade starting at the west going high grade towards east. Less risky of a hole, hopefully going to give us really good results, but also going to show us a lot at the same time. So those are some decisions we have to make. It was up to the geologists. They probably drill that hole in between, but that's really risky, and we got to keep the investors excited. So we're hopefully going to give them some really high grade with that one too. Neil, I interrupted you. Sorry.
Well, yeah, to Antonio's point there, understanding the geology and how it interacts with the alteration and the grade is very important. And ultimately that will drive excitement from the market, because it's going to allow us to get better holes and get better results. So we might not, it might not be advantageous for us to lead with an exciting new geological interpretation, but as that comes, it's going to lead to exciting, hopefully better results. I mean, that's the goal of doing any of this work. And so, yeah, work is ongoing this off season to really get a proper handle on the geology, knowing what we know now about what lies to the west, how the alteration changes, the different instances of mineralized dikes. All that is going to come together into a picture that's going to allow us to have a more predictive model for the drilling. And that's just going to allow us to get better grades and hit these longer intercepts. So that's the plan going forward. But again, it's a bit of a patience game there, right? This takes time. We need to wait till all the assays are in to formulate these models. And then in order to see the fruits of that labor, you need to wait for next year's drilling and next year's assays. So it's kind of where we're at there.
You're also kind of lucky. Well, not lucky. It's also work. I think, Neil, you actually mentioned is that maybe you're lucky to have this property, to put it that way. But you have a couple of...
No doubt about that.
But you have a couple of holes coming out right now. I don't think, I don't think you've released any core photos or anything like that. But if you can talk to me about what you're seeing in there, chalco, bornite, or whatever, do talk to me. If you can, don't. But talk to me about when they're coming out and how you expect to be releasing them. Just sort of one by one. Are you going to batch them? How are you thinking?
Well, now is a slower time at the lab, right? All the companies are generally kind of trying to finish up by this time, especially Golden Triangle companies. And a lot more results are in than we had earlier in the summer. We had really, really quick turnaround earlier in the summer because we started drilling in June, which is great. But yeah, we'll want to. I assume we'll continue to go the way they would be going. Either release single holes or one or two holes together as the results come in. So yeah, it's just going to be a matter of when we get the results. And then Tony has been releasing the photos once we've released the assay results, which I think is the best way to do it, right? People get really excited from photos. We have a lot of very nice mineralization in a lot of these holes that could generate a lot of excitement, but a 10 centimeter core photo only shows you 10 centimeters of that core. And so potentially releasing photos can be misleading. Even if we don't intend it to be, people can sometimes run with that. So I'm really happy we're doing it this way. I think it's a more responsible way to do it, and really let the lab do the talking, let the assays do the talking, and then we can release photos that support that. That said, there's going to be some nice photos being released from the rest of these holes.
Well, the one thing I've learned, we came out with photos first. We wanted people to repay attention to us when we started our drill program. And right when hole 8 came out, some of our thunder and our price appreciation, I was convinced we were going to double, and we actually went down. There's some pump and dump. People were just releasing core photos. And I said, we're not those same companies, because we're releasing core photos because we knew we were going to have good results. And one thing that I've learned is, if you're going to have great assays and you really have faith in your project, you wait till those assays come out. There's no reason to give core photos ahead of time. You give them out so that they make sense when you're looking at the assays, but there's no reason to give them out ahead of time. And the same thing with like giving partials. Look, if you're going to have a really good hole and you think you are and you believe in your project, you wait till that whole hole's out. Otherwise, there's funny business going on. And I think a lot of that funny business has hurt a lot of the sentiment and investors, and it keeps investors from coming back, into our industry. So it hurts us in the long run. And that's why I get so fiery when I see a lot of this, funny business going on, because it really hurts American Eagle, who's trying to do the right things with the right people, dilute as little as possible. And you have other people, taking away this money. There's only limited money to be invested in the junior mining space right now, and we want it, and we really do believe we have a viable project.
This year we've certainly seen enough of that. A couple of really big examples of that. But yeah, do be careful on XRFs or whatever it might be in core photos and stuff like that. I mean, truth isn't the drill bit, truth isn't the assay. So it's a good point that you're making there. Can you give me an indication though of any of the next holes? Are you expecting to, because you have again 5 now in the lab? Well, you've just finished the 17th, so you have 4 in the lab. The 5th one is going to the lab. All of them are going to be released this year for sure.
We should have most of them done before the end of the year. Guessing when your timing of your assays is a mug's game, so I'm not going to bother with that. But there's a lot of stuff. I mentioned this before in another interview. There's a lot of stuff that happens with those assays. It's a complicated process. There's a lot of reasons why certain holes get delayed. You have something called over limit. So pretty much anything over 1 gram per ton or % copper has to go back to the lab re-assayed. So a lot of times you're waiting for that on a certain hole. So that's why we gave 10 and 11 at the same time. So we're waiting for something over limits on 10. We had 11 done. So it's not necessarily trying to hide a hole, but you're just waiting for your whole assays of your hole to be released. So, if we have something that's material significantly better or significantly worse than, other holes we've drilled, we'll release them on its own, but otherwise we'll do them in pairs. I always say, I'm a big baseball fan. The best pitch to change up keeps people off their game. So we don't want people to start guessing when our assays are coming out so they can trade us accordingly. We want people to hold on to us, invest in us for the right way, and, expect a lot of good news to come out through the end of the year. And don't sleep on the off season. We're going to have news during the off season, doing IP work, doing a lot of other smart work. That's going to help us along the way, not only to target but maybe to prove up our current results.
Who are you a fan of?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a fan of the Blue Jays, but they're not in the playoffs right now. So I don't know. I want Philly to win. I like Bryce Harper.
Okay. What about you, Neil? No hockey? Come on, guys.
Hockey, you know what? I'm a Sens fan. I gotta say, went to school out in Ottawa. Some of the most exciting years of hockey there, and they got a good looking team this year. I'm kind of excited.
You got to sponsor a hockey thing. That's a new thing. I'm not going to mention any names, but there's companies out there sponsoring hockey teams now.
It's $10 million per jersey in the NHL. Currently, the Leafs are sponsored by Milk, which is shocking. But look, I love the mining industry, but you won't find anyone that leads a company that knows more about sports than me. So I could talk about darts and Phil Taylor if you want.
It's those lounge that count. It's those boxes passes. What do you how much more do you want to drill in this thing globally though? Like I've heard you talk about an initial resource estimate, Tony, maybe in 2025. Is that still among the lines of what you're thinking, or is that off the table?
It's something that we'll consider, but like I have a question for you, Antonio. I'll do the interview barbecue. What's the most recent huge acquisition that was done in the mining space? What comes to mind first? Go.
Newmont.
But what about before? What about after that? I'll tell you. It's Great Bear.
Great Bear,
Great
sure.
Bear
Oh, when you okay, because you said mining, that's why. But Great Bear, sure, yeah.
Great Bear didn't have a resource, so I think we can come up with a resource, but I think it also creates kind of a glass ceiling. So again, those are another decision that we kind of have to make. Does it help us out, or does it kind of stop us from where we think we want to be in terms of number of meters? Shoot, if we keep on hitting where we want, like we can keep on moving out in every direction, like, and don't sleep on the south either. So Blue Sky love to do 20,000 meter drill program next year, but if our equity goes up enough and we haven't been bought out, who's to say we can't do 100,000 meters? But again, we're working in a very murky investment environment. We're putting all of our drill holes in the very best spot so we get attention to the stock. So I think the number of meters you have in the ground is really a factor of your success, which I have no doubt Neil on this team.
Well, it's funny. I talked to not a lot, but I talk to a couple of companies every week, and a lot of times you would hear that. And companies like comparing themselves to Great Bear. It'd be nice if everybody hit that, but it's also a one in so many companies that do that, right? So that's why I'm always looking for a resource, something to maybe put my hang my hat on.
I don't, and honestly, look right now. You're not getting value for putting holes in the ground. So unless I'm getting a 65% bump from charity flow through, and Teck's investing me, and I know those shares aren't going to be sold, like you're just getting killed. I think where you're going to see the market go to if we're not careful is you're going to see a lot of consolidation. So people are going to start consolidating districts, resources, stuff like that, because quite frankly, it makes more sense to merge with another company, acquire their resource or their upside as opposed to putting meters in the ground. Because you spend $2 million in the off season, you lose $5 million in market cap. How does that make sense? But you also have people saying it doesn't make sense not to drill at all. So maybe consolidation is the thing. I've been contacted by other companies in BC wanting to consolidate, but quite frankly, why do I want to consolidate when I think we have the best property there? So right now, I'm going to put a lot of faith in my team and Neil and Charlie and our location and our property. And my uncle who died, who said this was the second best target he'd ever seen outside of Grasberg. That's not hyperbole. Neil heard him say it too. And I think he died for a reason. I think he left that for us. It's the closest uncle I had. I have a lot of faith in that holistically, technically, and logically. So we just want to kill people with really good results. And guess what? In a really crappy market, there's still investment opportunities. That's what my dad always tells me. Doesn't matter the sector, doesn't matter how the market's doing. And we want to be that diamond in the rough that when things and crap hits the fan, there's still American Eagle Gold that you can invest in. But guess what? We'll continue showing assays. We'll kill people with good results so they can't turn away.
One reason for consolidation could be, G&A reduction. How's that for you? How's your G&A?
Antonio, our shop better than anyone. We have the best G&A in the business. We have Joel Freeman. Joel can hear me right now. Like Joel be working at a big company, probably being a CFO at an IM Gold or Yamana if they weren't bought out. But he works for us, costs a lot of money. But guess what? We pay for him from 6 different companies. I think the biggest secret on the street is you got CFOs working for companies like taking a full paycheck, but it's really should take 1/5 of your time. So we pay a fraction of the cost that most other companies do. There's 5 other companies sharing our office. We share a fraction of the cost for G&A. I don't think you could reduce G&A by merging with another company. What you'd have to do is take on G&A, take on other salaries. We're quite happy where we are. I'm the only full-time employee that works for American Eagle. We contract Neil, Charlie's team, etc. So there's no value from doing a merger from G&A perspective, and I don't think any value from a technical perspective either.
That's true. Well, what I'm getting at with that question, of course, is the 5 million and what do you have, 5.5 million in cash right now, give or take. How far does that get you? You said you could do a drill program on that, but I'm thinking, can you cover everything? Like, can we be talking in 12 months and you tell me I've not raised money and I can still keep going?
So we have about mark to market right now, probably a little bit less than 4. I think we have 2.6 that earmark for flow through that will be put in the ground. Again, worst case scenario, Antonio, we're going to have the same size program next year that we have this year. And then, hope for a few things. Look, we have really smart geologists and a great property. So hoping those results come out well and our stock goes up. Also, copper's at 360. You're starting to see gold go up. I think gold's kind of a leading indicator of what copper is going to do. I think copper, you start seeing some tailwinds from copper. Again, might get some appreciation on the American Eagle gold side. And look, worst case scenario, do a 7,000 meter program next year. But, we always want money. We're willing to take a strategic investment, come in, get some charity flow through. Who's to say that we can't double our budget next year, do 2 drill programs? So I think what we know the very bottom line can be, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to put more meters in the ground. So, on the G&A perspective, we're covered for the next 2 years. And then from the technical perspective, we're covered all the way through the end of 2024. It's not a matter of if we're going to drill, it's how much we're going to drill. So right. we'll let the stock price speak for itself because our equity is our currency.
So far, Teck has shown willingness to keep coming in and financing. Is that still in the talks? Would they keep doing it? Because what did you raise last time at 28? Flow through, I believe, is what Teck put money in.
Teck's at 19.9. They're kind of tapped out. They'll match any raise to keep that 19.9, which is always nice. Whenever you're doing a raise, you got lead order that gives you 20% of your money. But I don't think Teck's coming in for any more until they want to eventually buy us, if they do. So yeah. But look, there's always opportunity for other companies to come in for 10 or 20%. Once you go over that 10% threshold, you have to report anytime you buy or sell. Companies technically don't want to be over that 10% because if they do want to get out of a company, they don't want to be hurting the relation with them by cutting some shares. Tech's in a good position financially that they won't have to sell us to create liquidity for other parts of their business. But once you get over that 20% threshold, you do have to put, I think, an official offer into the company, which they don't want to be at yet. So I think they're quite comfortable at 19.9. But hey, if you want to bring in, the CEO or someone from Teck, they could probably speak a little bit better from their perspective. But that's how I currently understand it.
Bring him on. I have to bring him on. Maybe we can get him to talk about American Eagle too. That'd be great. I'm thinking about a lot of questions. I know your time's coming up here too. What am is something else that you came here hoping to talk about, but I'm feeling to bring up?
I think we've hit it all.
What do you think, Neil?
Yeah. No, I think this this covered a lot about all we can talk about at this point with what we've got back so far. So yeah.
Good. A little bit of everything. Well, guys, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Yeah, the one thing I do want to say, investors know my email. They know how to contact me, whether it be CEO, people have my number, people have my email address. If you have any questions, I always have time to call or talk to potential investors, current investors. I love talking about NAC. Always make myself available for Neil and Charlie. We try and do technical calls, open ones on Zoom whenever we can. So feel free to reach out. It's hard to understand a lot of this stuff. Willing to hold people's hands. And again, talk to your investment advisor. I'm not saying invest in American Eagle, but if you do want to stay in the junior mining space, I think it's a very good opportunity. But again, talk to your broker. Everyone has different financial restrictions.